How to stop giving too much importance to everything, freeing your mind from constant thinking. In modern life, one of the greatest struggles we face is not the lack of opportunities or the scarcity of resources, but rather the overwhelming noise of our own mind. We live in an age where thoughts never stop, where constant comparison, judgment, and expectation push us to give too much importance to every detail of life. A simple comment from a colleague can spiral into hours of overthinking. A single mistake at work can transform into a week of mental punishment. Even the smallest daily inconveniences, being stuck in traffic, receiving a delayed response to a message, or misplacing an object, often acquire disproportionate weight in our minds. The truth is that this burden does not come from the events themselves, but from the way we interpret them. The habit of giving too much importance to everything creates unnecessary suffering, anxiety, and emotional exhaustion. To free ourselves, we need to understand the roots of this mental trap, recognize how it manifests in our daily lives, and learn practical ways to loosen its grip. This journey is not about becoming indifferent or apathetic. It is about cultivating the wisdom to distinguish what truly matters from what does not. It is about training the mind to let go of the endless cycle of worry and reclaiming inner peace. Through awareness, discipline, and practice, it becomes possible to live more lightly, more consciously, and more meaningfully. In this work, we will explore 5 major topics that form a complete path for those who want to stop giving too much importance to everything and free their minds from constant thinking. Each topic will delve deeply into both philosophy and practical exercises, offering not only understanding, but also tools for transformation. By the end, you will see that the ability to let go is not weakness. It is the highest form of strength. Understanding the nature of overthinking and the illusion of importance. Human beings are meaning-making creatures. Since the dawn of time, our survival has depended on the ability to notice patterns, anticipate danger, and imagine possibilities. This capacity for thought has allowed us to build civilizations, create art, and explore the universe. However, the very power that makes us human also contains a trap: the tendency to attach excessive significance to events, ideas, and feelings. To stop giving too much importance to everything, the first step is to understand the nature of overthinking. Overthinking is not simply thinking a lot. It is the repetitive, unproductive cycle of thoughts that go in circles without reaching resolution. Instead of solving problems, it magnifies them. Instead of clarifying, it confuses. Instead of bringing peace, it stirs anxiety. The illusion of importance. Why do we give so much importance to things that, when seen from a distance, seem trivial? The answer lies in the illusion of importance created by our minds. When something happens to us, it does not appear small because it is happening to us. Our egos magnify the event, and the mind convinces us that it deserves prolonged attention. For example, consider a critical comment from a stranger on social media. Logically, it may be insignificant. A person you do not know, expressing an opinion that does not define you, yet the mind seizes upon it, replaying the words, analyzing the tone, imagining hidden meanings. Suddenly that comment becomes a storm of insecurity, robbing you of peace for hours or days. The same mechanism applies to countless situations: an awkward moment in a conversation, a missed opportunity, or even a memory from years ago. The mind traps you in the belief that these things are of great consequence, when in reality they are passing clouds in the vast sky of life. The role of conditioning. Much of this pattern is learned. From childhood, we are conditioned to seek approval, fear mistakes, and interpret small events as reflections of our worth. Schools, families, and societies teach us to equate importance with attention. If we do not dwell on something, we feel as though we are neglecting it. If we do not worry, we assume we are being careless. This conditioning builds a mental habit to believe that the more we think about something, the more control we have over it. Yet, paradoxically, the opposite is true. The more we obsess, the more we lose perspective. By giving too much importance, we actually surrender our freedom, the emotional fuel of overthinking. At its core, overthinking is fueled by emotions: fear, shame, guilt, pride, and desire. These emotions act as accelerators for thought. Fear of failure keeps us replaying scenarios in our heads. Guilt keeps us trapped in the past. Desire makes us imagine endless what-if situations. The connection between thought and emotion is what makes overthinking so powerful and so difficult to break. It is not enough to simply think less. We must learn to address the emotions that drive our thoughts, recognizing them without being controlled by them. The consequences of giving too much importance. Living under the illusion of importance comes at a great cost. It wastes time and energy that could be invested in meaningful pursuits. It damages relationships as we misinterpret others' words or actions through the lens of our insecurities. It weakens health as stress and anxiety take their toll on the body. Most importantly, it prevents us from living fully in the present. When every small detail is inflated, the beauty of life is overshadowed. The laughter of a child, the warmth of the sun, or the quiet of a morning can easily be lost in the noise of constant thinking. Shifting perspective. To break free, we must begin with perspective. One of the most powerful questions to ask is, will this matter in 5 years? If the answer is no, then why allow it to consume hours or days of your life today? Another practice is to imagine yourself as an observer of your own life, watching from above. From that vantage point, events that seem monumental often shrink to their true size. This shift does not happen overnight. It requires practice, mindfulness, and courage to let go. But once the illusion of importance is seen for what it is, a trick of the mind, the grip of overthinking begins to loosen. At the end of this first step, remember, freeing your mind from constant thinking begins not with force, but with understanding. By seeing the mechanism of overthinking clearly, you weaken its power. You are not your thoughts, and not everything deserves the weight your mind tries to give it. If this message resonates with you and you want to continue exploring how to live with greater clarity and freedom, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Your journey toward inner peace is just beginning, and we will walk this path together. The weight of external expectations and the trap of constant comparison. From the earliest moments of our lives, we are immersed in a web of expectations. Parents expect us to behave a certain way, teachers expect us to perform according to certain standards, and society at large imposes endless rules of success, beauty, wealth, and recognition. While expectations themselves are not inherently negative, they can guide us toward growth and responsibility. They easily become chains that suffocate the human spirit when internalized without reflection. One of the primary reasons we give too much importance to everything is that we are constantly measuring ourselves against the expectations of others, and in doing so, we allow external voices to dictate the rhythm of our inner world. This leads to one of the most destructive patterns of modern life: constant comparison. Comparison, at its core, is a double-edged sword. On one side, it can serve as motivation. Observing someone else's achievements can inspire us to pursue our own potential. On the other, it often becomes a relentless source of dissatisfaction, because the human mind is rarely satisfied with enough. When we compare, we rarely stop at recognition. Instead, we add layers of judgment. Who is better? Who is behind? Who deserves more? In this constant game, we end up placing disproportionate importance on every little metric that defines our worth in the eyes of society. A number on a scale, a grade on a test, the number of likes on a post, the income of a neighbor, or the title of a colleague. Suddenly, these become symbols of value, and our lives become enslaved to maintaining or surpassing them. The danger of constant comparison is that it operates invisibly. Most of us are not even aware of how deeply it influences our behavior. Social media has amplified this tendency to an unprecedented level, creating an environment where the highlight reels of others are presented as the full truth. People see curated moments of beauty, wealth, or achievement, and believe their own lives fall short. This leads to a cycle of overthinking. Why am I not there yet? What am I doing wrong? What will others think if I fail? Each of these questions fuels the habit of giving too much importance to things that may not even align with our true values. The problem with external expectations is that they create a false hierarchy of importance. Instead of asking, what do I truly care about, we ask, what will others think of me if I do this or fail at that? Our minds are hijacked by imagined judgments, and we live as if the whole world is constantly watching and evaluating us. The truth, however, is that most people are too absorbed in their own struggles to scrutinize us as much as we fear. Yet, the illusion persists, and with it, we magnify the weight of every action, word, or outcome. To illustrate this, imagine a person preparing a presentation at work. The logical importance of the event is clear. It is an opportunity to share ideas, to contribute, and perhaps to be evaluated by colleagues. But the psychological importance assigned often far exceeds reality. Sleepless nights, constant rehearsal, replaying possible failures in the mind, these are signs that the individual is carrying the weight not only of the presentation, but also of the imagined consequences of how they will be judged. If the presentation succeeds, they feel temporary relief. If it falters, they experience crushing self-criticism. In both cases, the cycle of giving too much importance continues because the root problem, the reliance on external validation, remains unexamined. This pattern extends far beyond work. In relationships, people may stay silent about their needs out of fear of being judged as too demanding or unlovable. In education, students may pursue careers not out of passion, but because of societal prestige. In personal appearance, individuals may chase unrealistic standards, believing that only then will they be accepted. The common thread in all these situations is that the importance assigned to external approval overshadows the intrinsic value of the experience itself. Breaking free from this trap requires a profound shift in consciousness. The recognition that the opinions of others, while not irrelevant, do not determine our worth. The challenge is to internalize this truth not just intellectually, but emotionally, because our deepest fears are often tied to rejection and exclusion. Humans evolved in tribes where belonging was essential for survival. To be excluded was to face danger alone. Although society has changed, the primitive brain still perceives social rejection as a threat to survival. This explains why we give such exaggerated importance to external judgments. They awaken an ancient fear. Yet when seen clearly, this fear loses much of its power. Consider how many times you have worried intensely about what others might think, only to realize later that they either did not notice or did not care as much as you imagined. The mind creates scenarios far worse than reality, and by believing in these mental projections, we enslave ourselves. In truth, the majority of our overthinking about external expectations is based on illusions rather than facts. Another way to understand this is to recognize that people's opinions are constantly shifting. What is admired today may be criticized tomorrow. What is fashionable this year may be outdated the next. If we anchor our sense of worth to such unstable foundations, we will live in a perpetual state of anxiety. True freedom comes from rooting our self-worth in something more stable, our values, our principles, our connection to what we genuinely find meaningful. Learning to detach from constant comparison requires conscious practice. One effective exercise is gratitude. Instead of focusing on what others have, train your mind to appreciate what is already present in your own life. Gratitude shifts attention from scarcity to abundance, breaking the cycle of overthinking about what is missing. Another practice is mindfulness, learning to observe thoughts of comparison without judgment, allowing them to pass without fueling them. This reduces the automatic habit of inflating the importance of external expectations. It is also essential to redefine success on your own terms. If you measure your life only by the standards imposed by society, you will always feel inadequate, because there will always be someone richer, more attractive, more accomplished. But if success means living in alignment with your values, pursuing growth in areas that matter to you, and cultivating inner peace, then external comparisons lose their grip. The ultimate realization is that no one else's journey is identical to yours. Each person has unique circumstances, talents, and challenges. Comparing paths is like comparing a tree to a river. Both exist, both are vital, but neither invalidates the other. By embracing this truth, the habit of giving too much importance to every judgment or expectation begins to dissolve. Of course, this does not mean we should ignore feedback or isolate ourselves from others. Relationships and communities are vital for growth, but there is a difference between learning from others and enslaving ourselves to their opinions. The former expands us, the latter diminishes us. Living without the burden of external expectations requires courage, because it means stepping out of the comfort zone of conformity. It means being willing to disappoint others in order to be true to yourself. It means accepting that not everyone will understand or approve of your choices, and that this is not a tragedy, but a sign of authenticity. Paradoxically, those who dare to live authentically often earn deeper respect in the long run, precisely because they are not trying to please everyone. Once you see clearly that the weight of external expectations is an illusion, you begin to reclaim your freedom. The next time you catch yourself overthinking about how you appear to others, pause and ask, is this truly important, or is my mind creating unnecessary drama? With practice, this question can become a powerful tool for liberation. By loosening the grip of comparison and external validation, you open space for self-acceptance and peace. The mind no longer needs to race endlessly to meet impossible standards, and life becomes lighter. You begin to see that not every comment, not every glance, not every outcome deserves the monumental importance your mind assigns. What truly matters is living with integrity and presence, not living as a character in someone else's imagined story of you. At the conclusion of this second step, remember that freedom from constant thinking is not about cutting yourself off from society, but about refusing to let society's shifting winds control your inner compass. When you live by your own values, rather than by endless comparison, you stop giving exaggerated importance to what does not truly define you. If this truth speaks to you, and you want to continue walking the path toward a freer mind and a lighter heart, subscribe to our channel. Together, we will keep exploring ways to live with less mental burden and more authentic joy, learning to let go of control and accepting the flow of life. One of the deepest reasons we give too much importance to everything is the illusion that we can and must control it all. The human mind clings to certainty, predictability, and mastery, and when reality resists this desire, we spiral into overthinking. We replay conversations to see if we could have said something better. We plan for every possible outcome, and we try to anticipate every detail of the future. Beneath this behavior lies a hidden conviction that if we think enough, plan enough, and analyze enough, we will gain control. Yet the truth, which is difficult to accept, is that much of life is outside our control. The more we try to grasp it, the more it slips through our fingers. Letting go of control does not mean neglecting responsibility. It does not mean giving up on dreams or living recklessly. It means recognizing the boundary between what is within our power and what is not. This recognition is central to many ancient philosophies. The Stoics, for example, emphasize the importance of distinguishing between what we can control, our thoughts, our actions, our choices, and what we cannot, external events, other people's behavior, the unfolding of time. By obsessing over the uncontrollable, we waste energy, create suffering, and inflate the importance of matters that do not deserve such weight. Consider how often people replay events in their heads, wishing they had gone differently. Perhaps it is a relationship that ended, a career opportunity that was missed, or a decision that did not bring the expected outcome. The mind says, if only I had done this, things would be different. And this is the illusion of control extending into the past, as if endless mental rehearsal could rewrite reality. But the past is unchangeable. To give it too much importance is to imprison yourself in chains of regret. The only way forward is acceptance, acknowledging what happened, learning what can be learned, and releasing what cannot be changed. The same applies to the future. How many hours of our lives are consumed by anxiety about what may or may not happen? We imagine conversations that never take place, disasters that never occur, and failures that never materialize. We live in a theater of possibilities, mistaking imagination for destiny. The mind believes that by running through every scenario, it is gaining control. But what it is actually doing is magnifying the importance of shadows. The future, like the past, exists outside our direct control. We can prepare, yes, we can act wisely, yes, but we cannot predict with certainty, nor can we guarantee outcomes. To live as if we can is to invite endless frustration. Letting go of control, then, is an act of humility. It is a recognition of our limited power and a trust in the larger flow of life. Just as a sailor learns to navigate the winds and currents rather than fight them, we must learn to move with reality rather than against it. This shift requires courage because the ego resists it fiercely. The ego thrives on the illusion of mastery. It wants to believe that every outcome is the result of its efforts. To surrender that belief feels like weakness, but in truth, it is strength. When we practice letting go, we begin to see life as a river rather than a battlefield. The river flows regardless of our efforts, carrying us through seasons of calm and turbulence. We may steer our boat, but we cannot command the water. The paradox is that by releasing the demand for control, we actually gain greater peace and resilience. When something goes differently than expected, we no longer collapse under the weight of disappointment. When life surprises us, we no longer treat it as catastrophe, but as part of the unfolding journey. This attitude of surrender is not passive. It does not mean sitting idle and waiting for life to happen. It means acting with clarity in the present moment, while accepting that outcomes are not guaranteed. It means planting seeds without obsessively tugging at them to see if they are growing. It means giving your best effort without tying your worth to the results. To cultivate this mindset, one must practice releasing attachment to outcomes. Ask yourself, what is within my control right now? Usually, the answer is simple: your attitude, your effort, your focus. Everything else lies in the hands of time, chance, or the choices of others. By narrowing your attention to what you can influence, you reduce the habit of giving excessive importance to what you cannot. Another practice is embracing uncertainty. The mind hates uncertainty because it cannot map it. Yet uncertainty is the natural state of life. Instead of resisting it, we can learn to welcome it as a space of possibility. Many of the best experiences in life, falling in love, discovering a passion, encountering an opportunity, come not from rigid control, but from openness to the unexpected. When we loosen the grip of control, we make room for life to surprise us. Spiritual traditions across the world echo this wisdom. In Buddhism, the principle of impermanence teaches that clinging to control is futile because everything is in constant change. In Taoism, the idea of wu-wei, effortless action, emphasizes harmony with the natural flow. In Christianity, surrendering to divine will is seen as an act of faith. Though the languages differ, the essence is the same. Freedom comes from releasing the illusion of control. The consequences of failing to do so are visible everywhere. Anxiety disorders, burnout, and chronic stress are often rooted in the refusal to let go. People exhaust themselves trying to micromanage life, forgetting that no amount of control guarantees safety or success. They inflate the importance of trivial details because they believe that overlooking them might cause disaster. But in reality, what damages them most is not the event itself, but the weight they place upon it. When you begin to live with acceptance, your perception of importance changes. Suddenly, the small inconveniences that once dominated your mind, being late to a meeting, receiving a critical email, facing a minor rejection, lose their power. You see them as ripples on the surface of the river, not as storms threatening to sink your boat. You stop wasting hours replaying what cannot be changed, and you stop fearing what has not yet happened. You start living more in the present, where your true power resides. To reach this state, practice daily reminders. When you feel overwhelmed, repeat to yourself, "This is outside my control." When regret creeps in, remind yourself, "The past cannot be changed, but I can choose my response now." When anxiety about the future arises, tell yourself, "I do not need to know the outcome to act wisely today." These mantras are not empty words. They are anchors that pull the mind back from the illusion of control into the reality of the present. The beauty of letting go is that it brings both peace and freedom. Peace, because you no longer battle against what cannot be changed. Freedom, because your energy is no longer trapped in overthinking, but available for what truly matters. You begin to notice the quiet joys of life again. The warmth of a friend's presence, the taste of food, the simplicity of breathing. These were always there, but the noise of control drowned them out. Of course, letting go is not a one-time achievement. It is a practice, a discipline that must be cultivated continually. The mind will always return to its old habits, whispering that if you think a little more, plan a little harder, worry a little longer, you will finally secure control. In those moments, you must return to the truth. Life is not to be controlled, but to be lived. At the conclusion of this third step, remember, giving too much importance to everything is often a symptom of clinging too tightly. The art of freedom lies in loosening the grip, in trusting the flow of life, and in focusing on what is truly within your power. When you surrender the illusion of control, you reclaim the strength to live fully and lightly. If you are finding value in these reflections and want to keep discovering the path to a calmer and freer mind, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue to share insights that can transform the way you see yourself and the world. Cultivating inner detachment and the power of perspective. One of the most liberating skills a person can develop is inner detachment, the ability to observe life without being enslaved by every passing thought, emotion, or external event. Detachment does not mean indifference, coldness, or the absence of care. Rather, it is the art of caring wisely. It is learning how to engage with life fully while not allowing every situation to dominate your peace of mind. Without detachment, the mind is pulled in all directions, reacting to every small detail as if it were of monumental significance. With detachment, perspective returns, and you begin to see things in their true proportion. Most people confuse attachment with love or responsibility. They believe that to care means to worry excessively, to constantly replay scenarios, or to magnify the weight of outcomes. In truth, this is not care, but anxiety disguised as care. True care arises from presence, attention, and intentional action, not from endless overthinking. Detachment allows you to act more effectively because you are not blinded by emotional storms or distorted perceptions. It is the balance between involvement and freedom. When we lack detachment, we are like a person standing too close to a painting. Every brushstroke, every imperfection looms large, and the overall beauty cannot be appreciated. But when we take a step back, the picture reveals its harmony. Perspective is gained. The same applies to life. When you are overly attached to a single comment, a single failure, or a single hope, you magnify its importance. By stepping back, you begin to see that this event is just one part of a vast canvas. The power of perspective cannot be overstated. A single shift in how you view a situation can transform anxiety into acceptance, fear into courage, and frustration into peace. Consider a moment when you faced rejection, perhaps from a job, a relationship, or an opportunity. In the moment, it may have felt catastrophic, as though your value was diminished. But with time and distance, you often come to see that rejection redirected you towards something better. The event did not truly hold the significance your mind assigned to it. What changed was not the event, but your perspective. The human mind, however, is prone to narrow vision. When something happens, especially something painful, it tends to fill the whole mental screen. Detachment teaches us to widen that screen, to see events in context. One practice for this is temporal perspective. Ask yourself how important this will be in 1 year, 5 years, or at the end of your life. What seems unbearable today often becomes insignificant when seen through the lens of time. Another practice is spatial perspective. Imagine yourself as a small part of a vast universe, a single being on a planet among billions of stars. Suddenly, the weight of your worries begins to shrink. Detachment also requires awareness of the stories the mind tells. Every thought is a narrative, and many of these narratives exaggerate importance. For instance, a delay in receiving a message may trigger the story. They must be upset with me. A mistake at work may create the story. I am a failure. These stories are not facts, but when we identify with them, they become prisons. Detachment is the skill of seeing thoughts as just thoughts, not as ultimate truths. When you can say, "This is just my mind creating a story," you prevent yourself from drowning in exaggerated importance. One of the great paradoxes of detachment is that it deepens genuine connection. When you are not clinging to outcomes or obsessing over judgments, you can relate to people more authentically. You are no longer trying to control their perception of you or demanding that they meet your expectations. Instead, you are free to listen, to share, and to love without fear. Detachment is not withdrawal from life. It is entering life with open hands instead of clenched fists. The cultivation of detachment is supported by disciplines such as meditation, journaling, and reflection. Meditation trains the mind to observe without attachment, to let thoughts come and go like clouds passing through the sky. Journaling allows you to pour out the weight of thoughts onto paper, giving you distance from them. Reflection helps you recognize patterns of exaggerated importance and gradually weaken them. These practices are not instant solutions, but over time, they build the capacity to remain calm in situations that once triggered overthinking. An essential element of detachment is also self-compassion. Many people remain trapped in overthinking because they judge themselves harshly for every perceived failure. Detachment means learning to treat yourself as you would treat a friend, with patience, forgiveness, and perspective. You are not defined by your mistakes or by the approval of others. You are a process, always evolving, and nothing deserves the totality of your identity. By softening the way you hold yourself, you reduce the grip of exaggerated importance. Philosophical traditions have long praised detachment as a form of wisdom. The Stoics taught the practice of negative visualization, imagining the loss of things we value to better appreciate them and reduce attachment. Eastern philosophies emphasize the illusion of permanence. By remembering that all things pass, we naturally hold them more lightly. Modern psychology echoes these truths in the form of cognitive reframing and acceptance-based therapies. Across cultures and centuries, the message is clear. Freedom arises when we stop clutching at everything as though our lives depend on it. To see detachment in action, think of a person who remains calm in the midst of chaos. Perhaps it is a leader who makes clear decisions under pressure, or a friend who comforts others without becoming overwhelmed. What allows them to do this is perspective. They know that panic and exaggerated focus will not help, so they step back, breathe, and act with clarity. This is not because they care less, but because they care wisely. You too can cultivate this ability, not by suppressing emotions, but by refusing to let them dictate your entire reality. The consequences of living without detachment are visible everywhere. People suffer from burnout because they give monumental importance to every work task. Parents lose peace of mind because they worry endlessly about every small detail in their children's lives. Individuals destroy their health because they ruminate over every imperfection in their bodies or choices. Life becomes heavy not because it is inherently heavy, but because the mind insists on carrying unnecessary weight. Detachment is the art of setting that weight down. Practicing detachment does not mean you will never feel disappointment, fear, or sadness. These emotions are natural and inevitable. But with detachment, you experience them without being consumed. A storm may pass through, but you no longer believe the storm is the whole sky. You see that emotions are visitors, not permanent residents, and that they do not define you. This realization alone diminishes the importance you assign to them. Another dimension of detachment is letting go of the need to be right. Many arguments, both internal and external, are fueled by the obsession with winning, proving, or defending. When you can release this need, conversations become lighter, conflicts become less destructive, and the importance of being right diminishes. Instead of clinging to pride, you value peace. Instead of battling for control, you allow space for understanding. Over time, detachment leads to a deeper appreciation of life. Because you are no longer obsessed with control, judgment, or exaggerated significance, you are free to notice the present moment more fully. A simple meal, a conversation, a walk in nature, these become sources of joy, unburdened by overthinking. Life reveals its beauty not when it is overanalyzed, but when it is experienced with openness. At the conclusion of this fourth step, remember, cultivating inner detachment and perspective is not about withdrawing from the world, but about seeing it more clearly. When you stop clinging to every thought and outcome, you stop giving them unnecessary importance. You realize that most of what you worry about does not deserve the weight you place upon it. Freedom lies in stepping back, observing with clarity, and engaging with life lightly. If these reflections are helping you discover new ways to find peace in a noisy world, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Together, we will keep learning how to loosen the chains of constant thinking and live with greater clarity, freedom, and joy. Building mental freedom through daily practice and conscious living. The final and perhaps most important step in freeing yourself from the trap of giving too much importance to everything is the cultivation of daily practices that train the mind toward freedom. Understanding the nature of overthinking, recognizing the burden of external expectations, releasing the illusion of control, and developing detachment are all powerful insights. But without consistent practice, they risk remaining ideas rather than lived transformation. The mind is a creature of habit, and unless we replace old patterns with new ones, it will continue to repeat its cycles of exaggeration and anxiety. Mental freedom is not a one-time revelation. It is a discipline, a way of living, built moment by moment. To build this discipline, it is essential to establish practices that anchor you in the present and remind you of the truths you have learned. One such practice is mindfulness. Mindfulness is the art of paying attention to the present moment without judgment. By simply observing your thoughts as they arise, you begin to realize how many of them are repetitive, unnecessary, or exaggerated. A worry appears, and instead of fueling it with more thought, you observe it as if watching a cloud drift across the sky. The thought loses its power because you no longer identify with it. Practiced consistently, mindfulness weakens the habit of giving too much importance to every mental event. Meditation is another cornerstone of mental freedom. In meditation, you create space between yourself and your thoughts. At first, the mind may resist, producing endless noise. But over time, you begin to see that the mind is like a restless river, and you are not the river, but the one watching it flow. This shift in identity is profound. You realize that you are not your thoughts, you are the awareness behind them. With this realization, the importance you assign to every passing idea diminishes. You stop being enslaved by thought and begin to experience thought as a tool, useful when applied consciously, but no longer a master controlling you. Gratitude is another daily practice that transforms perception. The habit of overthinking often comes from focusing on what is lacking, what went wrong, or what might go wrong. Gratitude shifts attention to what is present, what is working, what is already a gift. Each morning or evening, take time to write down 3 things you are grateful for. They need not be monumental. In fact, the smaller, the better. A warm cup of tea, the sound of rain, a smile from a stranger. These reminders ground you in abundance. When gratitude fills the mind, exaggerated importance fades because you no longer dwell on scarcity. Physical practices also play a role in freeing the mind. Exercise, breathwork, and even simple walks in nature restore balance to the nervous system. Overthinking is often tied to a dysregulated body, shallow breathing, sedentary routines, disrupted sleep. By caring for the body, you reduce the physiological fuel of anxiety and rumination. Consider how different your perspective feels after a long walk or a session of deep breathing. What once felt overwhelming now feels manageable, not because the situation changed, but because your state of being shifted. Daily physical practices remind you that the mind and body are not separate. Caring for one liberates the other. Another essential element is conscious living, which means bringing intention to daily choices rather than living on autopilot. Much of the importance we assign to trivial matters arises because we are not truly present. We react instead of responding. By slowing down and choosing with awareness, we reduce unnecessary drama. For example, instead of rushing through meals while scrolling on your phone, practice mindful eating, noticing the taste, texture, and aroma. Instead of filling silence with constant noise, allow moments of stillness. Instead of automatically saying yes to every demand, pause and ask if it aligns with your values. Each conscious choice weakens the mind's habit of overreacting and strengthens your freedom. Boundaries are also a crucial practice. Many people give too much importance to everything because they have not learned to set healthy limits with others. They absorb other people's problems, take responsibility for others' emotions, and carry burdens that are not theirs to carry. Learning to say no, to protect your time, and to prioritize your well-being is an act of mental liberation. Boundaries are not walls, but filters, allowing you to engage with others without losing yourself. Without boundaries, every request and every opinion becomes inflated in importance. With boundaries, you begin to distinguish between what is yours to hold and what is not. Reflection is another powerful tool. At the end of each day, take time to review your experiences with gentle curiosity. Ask yourself, which situations today did I give too much importance to? What stories did my mind create that were not rooted in reality? How might I view these events differently with perspective? Reflection transforms daily life into a teacher. Instead of repeating the same mistakes unconsciously, you begin to learn from them. Over time, this habit rewires the mind, making exaggerated importance less automatic. Journaling complements reflection by externalizing thoughts. When you write down worries or overanalyzed events, you often see how disproportionate they truly are. On paper, a fear that felt immense in the mind may suddenly appear small. Journaling also allows you to track patterns, identifying recurring triggers, noticing progress, and reminding yourself of insights gained. The act of writing creates distance, turning thoughts from rulers into objects you can examine. Another aspect of conscious living is simplifying. Modern life is overloaded with information, choices, and possessions, each demanding attention. The more clutter we accumulate, the more the mind inflates trivial details. Simplifying your environment and commitments reduces unnecessary mental load. Declutter your space, limit your consumption of media, prioritize what truly matters. By simplifying, you create room for peace. What remains gains clarity, and what is removed takes with it the exaggerated importance you once assigned. Forgiveness, too, is a daily practice of liberation. Much of overthinking is fueled by resentment, rehashing what others did, what they said, how they failed us. But holding on to resentment is like carrying burning coal, hoping it will hurt someone else. In reality, it burns only you. Forgiveness does not mean condoning harm, it means releasing the grip it has on your mind. By forgiving, you lighten the burden of importance you gave to events of the past. You reclaim energy that can now be used for growth and joy. Equally important is self-forgiveness. Many people give too much importance to their mistakes, punishing themselves endlessly. Self-forgiveness is not denial of responsibility, but acceptance of humanity. It is the acknowledgement that error is part of learning, and that growth requires compassion as much as discipline. Each time you forgive yourself, you weaken the chains of overthinking and free yourself to move forward. To live consciously also means aligning daily actions with values. When your actions reflect your deepest principles, life gains coherence. You stop chasing external validation because your compass is internal. Every small act becomes meaningful, not because of how others perceive it, but because it resonates with who you are. This alignment reduces overthinking because it simplifies decisions. You no longer need to measure everything against shifting external standards. You know what matters to you, and that knowledge brings clarity. Building mental freedom is not about eliminating all thought or emotion. It is about choosing how much space they occupy. When you commit to daily practices, mindfulness, meditation, gratitude, physical care, conscious choices, boundaries, reflection, forgiveness, you gradually reshape the mind. Thoughts still arise, emotions still come, but they no longer dominate. You stop giving every detail monumental importance, and you start living with lightness. The journey requires patience. Habits formed over years do not dissolve overnight. There will be days when overthinking returns, when small matters feel heavy again. But each practice, each reminder, each moment of awareness builds resilience. The path is not linear, but with persistence, the balance shifts. You begin to notice more peace, more space, more clarity. The exaggerated importance that once weighed on you loses its grip. Ultimately, mental freedom is not just about personal peace, it is about how you contribute to the world. When you are no longer consumed by trivial worries, you have more energy to give to what truly matters. Kindness, creativity, service, love. Your presence becomes lighter for others, your relationships more authentic, your work more meaningful. By freeing yourself, you help free those around you, because peace is contagious. At the conclusion of this fifth step, remember, freedom from constant thinking is not achieved in a single moment, but built through daily practice. Each mindful breath, each conscious choice, each act of forgiveness is a step toward liberation. Over time, these steps accumulate into a new way of being, a life where you no longer give too much importance to everything, but instead focus on what truly matters. If you have found these practices inspiring and want to continue growing in clarity, resilience, and peace, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Together, we will keep walking the path of conscious living, building mental freedom, and discovering the joy of a mind unburdened by constant noise. As we come to the end of this journey, it is important to pause and reflect on what has been uncovered. The struggle of giving too much importance to everything is not a small or isolated issue. It is one of the central challenges of modern existence, one that quietly drains our energy, distorts our perspective, and steals the joy from our days. Left unchecked, it becomes a constant storm in the mind. a relentless cycle of overthinking that convinces us we are never enough, never safe, never in control. But as we have seen, this storm is not inevitable. It is a habit of thought, a pattern that can be understood, weakened, and ultimately transformed. We began by understanding the nature of overthinking itself, the illusion of importance that arises when the mind magnifies small events into monumental crises. By seeing this clearly, we learned that many of the burdens we carry are not real in themselves, but are created by the stories our minds construct. From there, we turned to the weight of external expectations and constant comparison, recognizing how much of our anxiety comes from measuring ourselves against the shifting judgments of others. This awareness opened the door to freedom, for when we see that our worth cannot be defined by external approval, we stop inflating the importance of every opinion or standard. We then face the truth about control, learning that much of our suffering arises from clinging to the impossible task of mastering the past, predicting the future, or controlling others. By letting go, we discovered that life flows like a river, and that our strength lies not in fighting its current, but in learning to navigate with humility and trust. From there, we explored the practice of detachment, stepping back to see life with greater perspective. We learned that detachment is not coldness but clarity, not indifference but freedom, a way of caring wisely without drowning in exaggerated importance. Finally, we arrived at the daily practices that make freedom possible. Mindfulness, meditation, gratitude, reflection, physical care, boundaries, and forgiveness. These are the tools that anchor us in reality, the disciplines that slowly rewire the mind, teaching it to live with presence and simplicity. Together, they form the foundation of a new way of living, one in which constant thinking no longer dictates our lives and peace becomes our natural state. The path is not easy, and it is not instant. The mind will always try to pull you back into old habits, to convince you that every detail deserves endless attention. But now you know the truth. Not everything is as important as your mind makes it seem. With practice, with patience, with commitment, you can live differently. You can live lighter, freer, and truer to yourself. The art of life is not to give weight to everything, but to discern what truly matters and to let the rest pass by like clouds across the sky. If these words have resonated with you, remember that this is only the beginning. Growth requires continuity, and transformation is sustained by community. Subscribe to our channel so that you can continue walking this path with us. Together, we will keep exploring ways to quiet the noise of the mind, to release unnecessary burdens, and to live with the clarity and freedom you deserve. Your journey toward mental freedom and inner peace is unfolding, and we are here to walk it with you.